Okay, so that's out of the way. I'm going to start off with just a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get into the budget discussion. First off, I had a question today about public comment, and I just wanted to note that everyone in our committee should feel very free and should be encouraged to give public comment, whether it is to the Board of Finance, to the Board of Education, to the administration, and whether it is in person, over Zoom, or in writing. And my suggestion is if you give, if you would like to give comments, just make a note that you are a member of this committee and that you are speaking on your own behalf, and these are your views. As we get into the meeting tonight, I think we should also keep in mind and consider whether we would like to, tomorrow night is the public hearing at the Board of Education. There's another public hearing at the Board of Finance, March 11th. But tomorrow's the public hearing for Board of Education. And if we want to give a collective comment, so if someone on the committee, myself or anyone else who likes to speak in public, wants to give, if we think that it would be a good idea or somehow helpful in this process to give a comment on behalf of the whole committee, we can also do that. So that's something we can think about and talk about further as we get into the discussion, but I just wanted to discuss it first so that it's top of mind. One other housekeeping issue, we will have a 13th member at our next committee meeting from District 4. She will be formally approved, I think, February 10th at the Girls Committee. So we should have.
We just brought in two.
I think Stephanie's District 4.
Okay.
Is it District 4? Yeah, I think, yeah.
No one of those two gotten this committee, okay.
Let me see.
Interesting.
Actually, I'll double check. Where's my little sheet? Yeah, here's it.
Could you speak up a little?
We have two new members of District 5, both wanted to be in education.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, because we have, yeah, it was just Jan, and now it's going to be Jan, Dan, and Stephanie. But
Stephanie, what's your last name?
But Ashley, you're 5 too, right? District 5?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But you had 2 more that wanted to be. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Which school is District?
Okay. So that's.
I think homes, but half my other.
I think that's all of the housekeeping I have. So, in an effort to keep the meeting going, I know there's a lot of information that we may want to discuss. I think the important thing is that everyone tonight gets the opportunity to speak and give input. So, I think there's a lot of big topics. If anyone feels passionately and would like to start off our conversation, please do so.
I'll start.
Thank you,
Not
Jan.
surprised.
Thank you.
I think the number that we have is 26 psychologists or people working in the mental health area. I may be wrong about that number, but I don't think I have an understanding of how they're divided in terms of who's doing what percentage of those psychologists are working with special ed, what percentage are working in terms of counseling of other people, how does it fit into the wellness center. I don't have an overview of how all of that comes together. I don't know if maybe somebody here can fill me in on that, but I'd like to have a better understanding of how that all works.
I mean, I can give you like a sort of off the cuff about elementary schools. Certainly, I know they had a very formal presentation when they decided to add the second psychologist to the elementary schools 3 years ago. Does that sound right? But I know that each elementary school has 2 psychologists. Right. I know that they serve both special needs students and regular education students. And I know that they are the most overworked and underpaid people in the district. And that if they could even afford a 3rd, I think that person would be just as busy. I know that, again, just anecdotally, my kids' elementary school was without one for a year because they were on maternity leave, and it was disastrous. It was really, really difficult. And so I know that 2 is, it's like essential for those elementary schools. I don't know how it works at the high school with the wellness center and, you know, so I can't comment on that.
There was a question.
I read in the notes that the school, that you sent from the school board today, and there are 8 guidance counselors at the high school. And I don't know exactly like how their workload is split, but there are a total of 8.
And then there's the psychologist, and I'm trying to get, this is a question raised to me that,
Yeah.
yesterday. So I haven't had a lot of time, because I was in New York today, haven't had a lot of time to work this out.
Yeah.
But, I've heard the concern before, and then it was raised to me again. And my question is not, do we need this many, but how do they break out in terms of what they do? And we know what the ones at the elementary school
Yeah.
do. How do they hook in with other things like guidance counselors and the wellness center and so,
Yeah, for the high school, I think if anyone else can answer, I don't think I'm a good
no.
source for that.
I just want to maybe make a statement in general. I think this is a great question, and I would love maybe all of the budget cycle to have folks from maybe special ed, person who runs special ed, Ms. Klein, just to come and tell us these things. I know she had a presentation, in-depth presentation. I watched it a couple times. I'm still unclear on a bunch of things. Quite frankly, when I think about it, we have 18, I think it's 18, the psychologist for 4,500 kids. You say it's not enough, they're overworked. Probably, the question is, the scope of services that we offer these kids, is it something that the school system should be offering more, right? So that's a question, and maybe that's my ignorance, and having somebody here to come here off budget cycle and tell me that it's really necessary, that'd be wonderful. Second, similarly to that, and so to jump in, is also the curriculum, and we may get there, but that's
Yeah.
another topic.
The
It's
what
6
is
million.
it? What?
Curriculum
Yeah.
department, we have 40 people, right, who work in curriculum development, it's $6 million a year. And they do a lot of work. They support the teachers, but I always view them as a think tank sort of for teachers. And I don't think that's the way that I think the teachers want to be led like that. But I may be totally off, so I would love Dr. Fettigan come at some point, maybe after all these budgets are done, and, and defend it. And I know she made a bunch of presentations to the Board of Education, but, in order for us to feel comfortable that the funds are spent efficiently, I think we have to be comfortable that the services are what they should be. And I'm not sure we are responsible for all the things that we do.
I'm not questioning whether or not what their services should be, because I'm not clear about what they are.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
how many, who is doing what, how they integrate into the school system.
right,
I'm not questioning whether or not we need them all,
right.
but I would like a better understanding of how it all comes together. I certainly am very aware of the fact that we have a lot of mental health issues. We have a lot of special ed issues. We have a lot of issues that require the kind of professional training that these people have. But I'm not clear on how they come together and who's doing what, and I'd like to have a better understanding. And just so I'm clear, I'm not suggesting, and I'm not asking this because I want to make a cut.
Yes.
I'm asking it because I don't understand. And I don't know if other people feel that way.
I just want to make a note in terms of feedback, like, when you're saying you'd like to speak with Dr. Fettigan, or you'd like to hear him. I did send, you all saw the note that I sent to the administration and the board, and I did make a note at the bottom that said, we would be happy to meet, or would like to discuss. I have not heard back from anyone in the administration or the board about our comments, so I think if we do want more information or more direct information, I think it would have to be a very clear request, because I don't know that, I think we'll have to ask very specifically for what it is that we want.
And again,
Just putting that out there.
Yeah, and I don't think it needs to be part of the budget cycle, but,
Peter, I can't hear you.
I said that, for me at least, it doesn't have to be part of the budget cycle, but this is a long-term issue, for me to understand what all these folks do.
Janet? No?
I think they, I just assume they have a lot of work and they're overworked, and we can all imagine what all the difficulties are that they deal with.
Now my question is, where are they, who is Do we have people that are
Yeah.
particularly focused on special ed, for example? Do we have psychologists particularly focused on that? Do we have psychologists particularly focused on other areas? I think it would be helpful to know.
I thought that question kind of came up in the January 28th. Remember she was talking about,
Well, at the elementary school, again, I can tell you for sure that
Yeah.
those psychologists do both. It's not as if
That's
one
what
only
I'm saying.
handles special education and one only handles regular
Right.
education. They both do both. So it's, they have a mixed bag of work that they do every day.
I would have assumed that, but on the rest of them, I know that about the elementary schools.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, once we get a little later than that, I'm not good with the feedback, so.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I don't know about the others, so, just the elementary.
I think a big part of the guidance counselors at the high school is the college admissions process
Yes.
for
Yes.
several months out of the year, at least they're pretty locked down on that. I don't know how much like mental health advice they're, and counseling they're giving to the kids during that
Right.
time. I think it's really hard to get into them, even to get help for like your college application.
Well, I
I've
think
heard
a lot of
that.
it,
Yeah, I've heard
at
that.
other times of the year, the guidance counselors are helping kids understand what courses they should be taking the following year and what the requirements are and how to fill those
Yeah.
requirements or.
And at the high school, they wear both hats, they dental,
I
health,
mean,
and
I
No,
think, I don't
that
think
doesn't
so.
make sense.
I don't think so.
No, I
No,
don't think so.
yeah, I think
No.
that's something.
So that in addition to the 8, there's other 8 guidance counselors.
There's
other people.
psychologists at the high school.
Yeah,
too.
there has to
Yeah.
be.
I think 18 in total in the district.
But they're
That's what-
psychologists, right? But
Yeah, that's different,
But I
I think
think
it's different
the guidance
function that you
counselors-
described.
Right,
Totally
that's what I'm
different.
saying.
I think
Yeah.
that's a different.
Yeah, that's what
line
it
item,
was
so
sounding like they were
that-
splitting their time.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Has anybody digested the Q&A for tomorrow night? 'Cause it has 100
I mean, I've looked
I
at
do.
it.
And it's a lot of
Oh,
it's
yeah.
breakdowns of who does what, which is.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I looked
Yeah,
at
so
it.
it's-
what I was gonna say,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Para-
Yeah,
But it's,
What is it?
sometimes it's hard, I feel like you need a tutorial on this, because I don't know what so many of these, like, kind of what you were talking about, the psychologist, the wellness center, and with some of these line items, I'm like, what does the yes, no mean? I don't understand.
Yeah,
I'm
and the
trying,
meeting was confusing on Tuesday.
it's very hard to follow.
Right, I mean, I was, right?
I
I
think
mean,
they
is it
were
just me?
confused too.
Yeah.
Well, they
I
don't
think they
Yeah.
were.
yeah, but.
So, yeah, it's a lot. I mean,
the,
Dan,
the,
do you?
the one thing that's just stuck
Yeah.
out to me is the mental health spend for,
Yeah.
Yeah.
for us is significantly higher than all the other.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they had the breakout, you're right.
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's
It is.
one reason why I'm here.
I think it's because we have, again, someone corrects me, but I think that we have a director of mental health that I don't think the other schools have. I think that's a separate role that we have that maybe the other DIRCs don't. Anyone, is that bad
Sounds
information?
right.
I think that's right.
It's
So I
like
think
a
that's,
new department.
yeah, so I think that's why ours is more, than the others, but again,
But then they alluded to something about somebody was there and then they're no longer there, so I wasn't really sure if that was the, like, director of mental health. I don't know, there was something.
Dr. Dad is still in the district,
Okay, I thought there was
so-
somebody that they were talking about, so that was like an open FT. Honestly, I can't, I have a hard time following it.
I think that, yeah, I'm not, yeah, it was, honestly, I had a lot of questions after it too, and I've been going through the Q&A, and it's been helpful, but,
But even what you're saying, like some of the curriculum leaders, it was very hard to follow, like who's, what positions they're talking about. Cutting for curriculum leaders versus their specialty in the subject matter.
Yeah,
Did
the department
you-
head,
yes,
like, the
yeah, I was
the top
very-
part of
And they did try to describe it in the Q&A, right? They want to combine the department chairs, from, that's the way they
Right.
describe it here.
And
There's
you're-
some savings to it, but it cuts into, the core and whatever Dr. Adley has built, right? So the question is.
I wonder why Dr. Dad couldn't be the wellness coordinator? Because last year she had a wonderful program of going around to the elementary schools and giving like parent tutorials on helping elementary age kids, even though she tends to focus on the older grades. And then her job was on the line and she kind of disappeared and she's still gone. Like she hasn't resumed those programs at the elementary level. So I'm wondering, like, can she not be a part of this wellness program and be in there, like, helping the kids? Or what is she up to?
I don't know.
Because they never mention her anymore. She was saved from the cuts last year, and then now she's just kind of like MIA in this whole thing.
We should probably ask about that.
Yeah. I don't know is the answer to that. I don't know. I know that with regard to the department heads, and the administrative, leaders, I put their names on somewhere. Is it Scott McCarthy and Mark Mazzoni, from the Administrators Association? They came and gave public comment along with, Principal Dunn and Principal Demoulas to talk about, their thoughts on the way that everything had been structured and how they felt very, passionately about keeping the structure with the department heads the way that it was currently. So they had a lot, they had, a lot to say about that. I thought it was interesting that they came and gave public comment, because I haven't seen that before. Also the elementary school, all of the elementary school principals to talk about the paraeducators and the second and third grade classroom size. But I don't, other than, those are certainly experts over what I would know about the curriculum heads, so I don't know. I don't have a lot to offer in terms of what's better than what we have now. I think people are happy with what we have now, and I think that the reason that we're talking about dismantling it is because we have a really tough budget to meet, so we're looking at ways to do that.
I think it was it Sarah Parent was sort of saying, if it costs X amount, then that's what it costs.
Yeah.
And I sort of felt that they were going on.
Yeah.
As a professional
Yeah.
teacher myself,
Yeah.
I don't think people ask for things that they don't need. And if these are the things that they feel really strongly about,
Yeah.
I would like, I hope we could be able to support that as much as
Yeah.
possible. And not by having it, you feel that it's going to affect the whole overall education
Right.
program, then I think it does have to go back to the drawing board.
I think it's difficult. I think that's why when, you're asking about Dr. Dad, or we're talking about, the other, whether it's the curriculum heads or the psychologists, it's just a really difficult discussion because, I don't know, for many years when we would watch the budget discussion, it was, I don't know, should we add ASL as a, language in the high school, or what about open choice? Should we add this program? Should we add the school psychologist? It was always like, what? It was like, what, like, it was always, some of the things made it, some of them didn't, but the idea was that we were always looking at like things to do to add to the school or to the curriculum or to the program that was going to, benefit. And I feel like this budget cycle, and to some extent last year, we're just chipping away at the existing foundation. I know we're not supposed to say to back into a number, but to back into a number is what, you know what I mean? So I feel like this is a very tough process because no one's saying it's a good idea to get rid of para-educators. No one's saying it's a good idea to have second grade classes that are 24 kids. I just don't, I find this discussion to be really difficult in and of itself because I don't know how to answer that question because I don't want to, because I don't think, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's frustrating.
I feel
So.
like the board should defend their budget. Like, this is maintaining, it's literally not adding anything new to the student experience. If it is driven by an increase in healthcare costs and salary and things that are unavoidable, why don't they just defend that to the Board of Finance, and this is what we need, like, to maintain what we had last year, no improvements, everybody just stays the same. Why can't they just fight for that a little bit, instead of just, I mean, I get it, they're like, okay, we'll consider it and see what we can take away, but at this point, it's ridiculous, like, the things that are being thrown out to save, $3,000 here or there, it's just so unnecessary. It just feels like it just doesn't have to be that way. Like,
and I think a lot is getting lost in the process, right? When that's the spirit that this is entered with, it becomes like even, I feel like it's almost like you're approaching it. What did I say last meeting? Like, oh, I'm curious, it's not a cut. It's like that's your starting point. And I just feel like, at least for me being new to this, if I'm overly focused on this, I'm blind to the things that I'm really here trying to learn, and how to best do my part as a part of this community. And I imagine, because this is one part of a very multifaceted process, I imagine others on the, not to speak for them, but others that are involved in this with like you know, that ultimately have to make this decision must be conflicted in the same way. So, I mean, again, I know there's many, many things at play, and I feel like I've made my opinion about the things known, so I won't do it all again. But I agree. I hope it can get back to the spirit of like, what is this for? And if this is truly where we end up, not that it needs to become contentious and horrible, but it's like, if it's gonna be this number anyway, say your piece, you know, which I feel like it's going more toward, and I hope it can be respectful and not contentious. But I do. I feel like a lot is getting lost.
But I also
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much the best question for the whole process, and it repeats year after year, that the Board of Finance seems to have too much power,
There you go.
and they
Yeah,
throw a
well, so-
number out,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I've used it in public many times, I'll use it in this committee meeting. It's completely arbitrary. It has nothing to do with the reality on the ground, what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
If inflation were 50%, they'd still say 4 or 3.
Yeah,
And they
So-
don't tell you why.
So,
that's helpful to know.
yeah, we'll buy a $100 million island, but, you
Yeah.
know, this is only 3 or 4%.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we all get it. Nobody wants our taxes to skyrocket.
Yeah.
We want some discipline. But I think your point is so valid that
Mhm.
if this has a real rationale, push back on the Board of
Yeah.
Finance. But it seems they have all the power. So I don't mind saying that in public. It seems they have
Yeah.
all the power.
I said it to
And I'm
them
not sure
today in
why.
an email, so don't worry.
There are other departments in this town that the Board of Finance watches, and I don't know why we get so much attention.
Well, it's the
Obviously-
biggest part.
Obviously, but every department has things that might not be necessary, and then who knows?
So couple things, right? I think we sit in RTM and we can change the bylaws of the town, right? Right now, Board of Finance comes with 3% or 4%, Board of Education comes with 7%. I was always hoping we can come in and say, what are the 100 people who actually vote and represent the taxpayers? We should say 5.5, right? We're okay with 5.5, but it doesn't how it works. We can
No.
always go below it, so we
Right.
can decide to change it, right? We have a council, we have people sitting there, we can suggest it, right? But on the other hand, the Board of Finance does explain their logic, right? They say, listen, we want long-term 3%, short-term 3 to 4% because of some of the inflation, plus unknown and unexpected issues, right?
Same old.
And when I look at the things that we're trying to crowd out, the general education, right? The normal running of the system that you're describing, it's really, these are unknown and a lot of it is unexpected, right? Insurance up 12%, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Transportation up 7% because we don't have a depot. We cannot find a depot. We pay $500,000 more than we're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
And special education, right, which is growing 10%. So reality is, these things went from, and I heard a number in public comments, so I don't know if it's true, in 2008, these 3 items were like 15-20% of budget. 4 years ago, they were 37% of budget. Now it's 41%
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
school budget,
Those are,
right?
yeah.
So if something grows up 10% then to 15% a year, it's clearly crowding out, and you know, now we're sort of cutting into the meat, right? And we are
Yeah.
trying to find, and the Board of Education is trying to turn every stone to find the efficiency. Now,
Yeah.
there's a couple of suggestions that I have that they have not turned every stone yet, and maybe that's something we can ask them to do, maybe if not this budget cycle, but come to the Board of Finance and say, listen, we are really running it at 4. We have 4.9 right now. They suggested in the January 28th meeting, they said 4.5, right? Because they said, we're gonna do participation fees, we're gonna do these things, and for these things, I would make some suggestions, I would agree with that. Between 4.5 and 5, that's something I would vote for at RTM, and maybe do things like the participation fees that, you know, that are reversible. If we're in a tight budget right now, but we have a long-term plan how to make some of these adjustments, right? One of these things, we should insource some of the special education. We talked about it, right? And I know they were tasked with thinking about these problems, right? We have 9 million they were spending on 100 kids out of district, right? Could we bring some in to save some, you know?
Again, that's a topic that's been talked about for at least as long as I've been here, 11 years.
But has
But
it,
it's such a big one, I guess nobody knows really how to.
now it's interesting, you know, I saw the Darien Times last year, right? It's not only us, right? You know, there's this report, it's gonna be Senate Bill 1 in Hartford,
Yeah.
where they're basically saying, listen, these towns are crowding out general education kids. It's, you know, and they're suggesting, by the way, that instead of 4.5 times multiple, getting money back over 4.5 times the average, because they wanna make it 3.
The ECR?
ECR, right, that would bring a couple million back.
Yeah.
And they say we're gonna have $20 million pilot program for insourcing, figuring out what we can insource. A couple of these districts can get together and, if it's just not Darien, maybe it's a couple towns around, right? So, to come to Board of Education and say, listen, give us time this year to figure out what we can insource. And I always think what would be valuable, and I don't know if it's a hot potato, people don't want to talk about it, but I always bring it every time. We have 21 kids in special ed in Darien. Durg has 16, New Canaan 14, right? And the question was to Ms. Klein, and when they did the deep dive, why? And she said, I'll look into it. And she's probably looking into it, and it's a very tough job she has, right? But should we bring a third party to explain? And maybe we will conclude that, listen, we do more services for these kids, and we as a community say, this is great, let's keep it. But this 5% difference is probably a couple $1 million too, right? So should we do that? The third thing I would come to Board of Finance is saying, listen, insurance is crazy. It's going up 12%. So we have an option to do self-insured, right? And I know it was addressed. I don't know the outcome, but my gut says that it would be cheaper to self-insure short term, but obviously it brings much more risk, right? Because if there's problems, we would have to pay. So that's not a great solution, but we can overrun this district if insurance goes up 12% every year. And you give us 3 to 4% guidance, right? So, we would self-insure unless you guys allow us to do 5% because this is unknown and unexpected. Nobody can tell us how it's gonna be next year or 12 months from now. We don't know, right, how many people get, what's the long-term insurance growth? Is it 3, 4%, maybe 5%? It's definitely not 10, it's not 12,
It shouldn't be above GDP growth.
right?
Should
So.
we what?
It should not be above GDP growth. It should be the same.
GDP.
So call it 3%.
Right, so there is a way to do it, and Board of Finance may listen, but we can change it, we can change the code, we can, do a lot of things, right?
Yeah, because the challenge right now is it's yay or nay on the budget.
Yeah.
There's no wiggle
So
room
frustrating.
whatsoever. For us, as the RTM.
Yeah, it's demoralizing to have.
I think you can go lower, you can say, if they say 4%, you can say 2. I think this, I'm not saying that's what we want, but we want to be also able to go higher. And maybe maybe there's a reasoning why it's set up like that, right? We are sort of, the role of RTM is different, and as the system works, and it's worked for over 100 years, but, now we're sort of, you're right, the Board of Finance is Chair of Board of Finance is the most powerful person. Shocking to me that this is a voluntary position. I know how much time I spend on this, but I know that somebody decides
Yeah,
150
million a year, 1,000 people working for this town, and it's a voluntary, what somebody does in their free time. This is amazing that, and I commend these folks that they spend so much time and effort, but I prefer we pay him well, or her, and
Drop it to
Call
2%.
maybe
give
nothing
them
will
the
change,
difference.
maybe nothing will change, right, but it's. But I think
Can I ask
if we come, if Board of Education Council, but they need to make these suggestions that I have, right? Around the special ed, around the depot, and maybe, I forgot the depot, maybe there is already an answer. We cannot find place in town.
think that's what they said.
They said
We cannot
they
find
said-
place in town?
That's
Is
their
it-
response,
Okay,
that there's
so
no
maybe
place.
that's off the table, right? Maybe the
Yeah.
insurance doesn't make sense either, but something has to give, we cannot grow 40% of our budget at 10%
Yeah.
long term.
It seems like when you look at the piece of land, they could have made an attractive building for buses at Highland Farm. It's just an open plot, like if we absolutely had to do it. They'll never do that now, but that was an available spot.
I always
Great
thought
Island's
the
available.
recycling
I
centers.
think you would have had a hard time getting that through in a residential area.
Well,
That's it.
Well,
The
we went on
recycling center
for
seems
years
natural to
about
me.
the cell tower.
Is there enough
Yeah,
space?
the what center?
Oh, the recycling center.
The
I don't know if there's
recycling
enough
center.
space.
Yeah.
Put the cell tower there?
Yes.
But yeah, you're in a Tony town, real estate is very expensive.
Yes, yes.
so-
Just to ask a fundamental question, what is the mandate of this committee? Is it to maximize the education of the town, or is it to trim the fat to meet the number that the finance committee?
No, so our role is to be the subject matter experts on the RTM when it comes to education. So to be the people just a little bit more informed than the general RTM, because there are people on Parks and Rec and the Rules Committee and also, our job is to know a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we can inform the rest of the RTM, what we observe as the quote-unquote specialists.
But do we vote on anything? I mean, do we vote on a budget or?
No.
we do-
So
Eventually.
We,
Yeah.
I was just curious,
yes
I
and
don't
no,
know.
right? The RTM votes. We can vote as a committee and then we share with the RTM
Our recommendation.
And
our
recommend-
views, and those views can incorporate a vote. So it was unanimous or wasn't unanimous,
They
but
just take it into consideration, like
Okay.
nothing actually happens.
we have no
It's just
extra
like
authority
thank
above the
you
RTM.
For your input.
So I think that's one of the reasons that we need to get as many questions that we know are out there in the community answered, so that we can give some insight, if we have any, at the RTM if questions come up there, because this is the committee that's taking the extra time to look at the budget. And other committees are looking at other park and rec budget and things like that. But,
Which are serious budgets.
what?
They're serious budgets.
Those
Yeah.
are too,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Of course, they're all important.
Yeah,
It's
that's
all
what I'm
money.
saying.
Mhm.
And we are,
Oh, sorry.
I understand that ours is the biggest, but I think we get disproportionate amount of attention. There's a lot of, every department has something or other that they might not really need, but they like it.
Well, and I think you guys all are raising terrific questions and the stuff that Peter was just raising about, I'm very specifically involved with special education in this town. My daughter is a huge recipient of that in district. But there, with the information vacuum, then people just make stuff up.
Right.
And so that's why these
Right.
questions are so important. Like,
Yeah.
there may be terrifically valid answers, and we can't get it all from Shirley Klein's presentation or any one of the department head's presentation, but really valid questions of, if you need it, then show us you need it, and then we'll say, awesome, great, we're doing a great job for the town, like the guidance counselors or the mental health practitioners. But in the absence of real answers, people then just go run amok. And it's not useful, not helpful.
But I'm gonna say an answer to a question that I don't think I've ever understood. What is the huge reluctance to not raise the fees for the athletics? We can all have an answer, but what is
Yeah.
their answer?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like a taboo subject.
But I think it's, my understanding is very much on the table. In fact, it was already in, I'm taking on, but it's possible.
It was in last year, right, and then they.
Yeah, but I think now they have a better understanding of how it works.
And they should.
And I think
I'm all out
It's
for
a
it.
very valid,
the reluctance, the way I understand it, Board of Education wants to make sure it's equitable.
I know
You know
that,
that,
that's a
but-
given.
Right.
Okay.
But these numbers are big. Participation fees, it's 230,000, you know? It's a lot, and I'm talking about flat fees, $100 flat fee with some cap, you know, so.
The equity issues, I think, are frequently taken care of for good reasons. Not everybody knows that. But I still think there's an enormous
Part of year one, yeah.
reluctance to
List of all
say we need to raise them because.
Well, if we're choosing between adding fees to sports and clubs, or getting rid of educators in the classroom, or making class sizes larger, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I have no hesitation choosing, to retain teachers, paraeducators, keep the class sizes the way they are, and charge for sports or theater, whatever it is. I don't love the idea of charging fees, but I would definitely side with participation fees over losing teachers or paras.
So I think it's reversible, so if we do it, and in a year, we actually see that participation went down, because I think it's wonderful that 80% of kids can play sports, it's
Yes,
wonderful,
I do
and it's
too.
team and all that, but I bet that there won't be one, because of the $100 fee, that's not participating. I would bet it's a beer. Nobody's gonna quit because of $100. Everybody's
One
gonna
of
do
the
it
things
again.
that, one of the things that was talked about at, I don't know if it was the last board meeting or the one before, is that if someone is on a reduced lunch,
Yeah.
qualifies for a reduced lunch, then there would be an opportunity for that student not to pay the $100 fee.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
I think it's important, and I assume that it's important that people who might be dropping out because of the $100 fee No, that,
Yeah.
Well, I was a parent who, my daughter was a captain of the track team, and even the paying for the dinners that they did, the
Mhm.
pasta dinners, there were subsidies for that for kids who couldn't.
Yeah.
So there's a fund
Yeah.
that pays for that.
yeah.
Can I ask a new question,
Yeah,
newbie
yeah,
question?
yeah.
So you were talking about all the different budgets. Like if someone, one of the other budgets did cut their budgets, can they pass that around, or is that just like, that goes back to the town?
I'm only focused on the education budget, so I don't know
Yeah,
what.
but like in your history of being here, is that ever a way to balance things?
You mean like in the context of?
Redistribute.
like-
Redistribute money,
Yeah,
balance
yeah,
money.
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know, I was thinking more in terms of like if the capital budget versus the operating budget. I don't know.
I think if funds go unspent, they go back into the general fund.
Correct.
Yeah.
They go back.
There's
That's,
three
Well,
different-
unspent or budgeted? So
well,
we haven't spent anything yet, right, so.
Like, we
no,
even
but
had a
the
year
No, but
where-
if the year
existing current-
passes,
Current
yeah.
year,
Yeah.
right?
Like we even had a year where they decided like, oh, we came out with extra, so we're gonna pass this extra to your budget. Like I haven't seen that, so I don't think we should hang any hopes on that, but
I was just curious of the
That would be
process.
great.
Yeah, I don't think that currently,
we
right,
ever
for this
see it.
coming fiscal year, that people say, hey, we save in, you know, in this department, we can do 200,000 less, why doesn't education take it? I don't think.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, so
Yeah.
say there's 10 budgets, just
Yeah, that
to
doesn't
make it
work.
easy.
No, they don't.
And like the ninth budget's like,
Yeah.
we don't actually need $500,000, you can give 200,000 to this, that doesn't happen.
No, I don't think they can
Wouldn't that be
transfer
novel?
between.
Well, I mean, it would make sense, right? I mean,
Every
There's-
department has a budget. that
Yeah.
needs-
I know they have a budget, but then is it when they decide that there's something that they
Jump
can
in.
give up?
I don't know if anybody's seen the proposals for the fees, but there's like three different
Yeah,
options.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
range from everything down to like
Yeah.
robotics and everything
yes,
else.
yeah,
I mean, I don't even, some of it just looks like they just copied and pasted 200 down, and then they're
Right.
like, these should be 300. I don't know the logic,
no,
nor do I want to dig, but it also has scholarships
Yeah.
built
Yeah.
into it for that
Yeah.
cost, yeah.
you're right, there's like a lot of different ways to do it, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure which way they're going to decide to do it, if they decide to do it. I think some amount of fees, I know the DERG most of the schools in the DERG do charge a fee for athletics, and it's anywhere from $100 to $200. I think 200 is the top, but I
This
think-
goes to 340.
Unless you're in one of the non-CX sports,
correct, yeah,
skiing,
Yeah.
squash,
yeah, yeah,
those kinds of things.
yeah.
Then they're being asked to pay fair amount.
Well, I think that's one of the, like, then the other option is like, that everyone pays the same amount, right? Like, there's like several different proposals, right? So, I mean, yeah, I don't think anyone should be paying more,
Just because their sport is small.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just maybe touch once more about, on your question, about what
Mandate.
we're trying to do,
Yeah.
right? So the way I view it is we try to inform and advise the RTM, but really, what as a member of the RTM you should be looking at, right, is what's the impact on the student? Because we're starting from such a high level. I don't even have to look at the absolute level. I'm just looking at the change. Is it getting better or worse, right? And in this budget, even in this budget, if you look at it, Dr. Adley, there's a bunch of new courses, right? There's new theater club, right? It's not nothing. I know we were used to more, but then they're trying to do the best. There's this education of the teacher, which is wonderful, this professional development. I don't know if it's gonna go through or not, right? So impact on the student, and then efficient use of sources, of funds, that's the way I look at it. And, there's hours of the 9 people on the board trying to figure out and turn every stone. I'm not sure they're turning every stone, but they're coming close, right? And the third thing I'm thinking, what's right for the taxpayer? At some point, right, we're all taxpayers, and I always compare it to the wealth in town, right? I mean, is it going more than 5%? Probably not, right? Should it be long-term over 5%? Maybe 1 year over 5% makes sense, but, is your house growing by 5% a year? Maybe it is, but maybe it's 7%, maybe it's 3%, but that's like the three lenses that I look at when I.
But we're all saying there should be some kind of flexibility built in here instead of the same old, there's like no one's at work but in the Board of Finance, but here's the 3% number, like you can just count on that, no one.
Yeah.
But has to show up.
Just respectful, right? They say core growth, new growth, and the unknown, right? So they say present it, defend it, and we're gonna be there, hopefully.
Yeah.
Now, reality is.
But we've all been present last year, particularly
we
following the
didn't work out
inflation.
that way, right?
Yeah, where they were just brutal,
There
actually.
is 11 million in taxes that were overtaxed, and we were all overtaxed over the last X years, right? Which sitting, and it's presented in their presentation, Board of Finance, that it's excess over our target, right? So how long should it take to spend? I mean, every family wants to have some kind of rainy day fund, right? But it's a lot of money, 11 million. Should we spend it over 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? You know, and I know they wanna spend up to 2 million this year, maybe it's the right number. Maybe they should do more, maybe they should, but you know, we should be requiring these people to explain why is it there even,
Yeah.
11 million, right?
Well, I think that you raised a really good point a while ago, which is the Board of Ed needs to get out there and really defend the budget. And in meetings, they discuss the budget, but I don't see a real indicator that they're gonna defend the budget. They're gonna stand up and say, this is, we really need.
It is what it is.
What?
It is what it is.
Yeah, I would like to see the board take a more aggressive, if you want, stand on what the budget is and why they need it this way. I think we don't hear enough of that.
Well, I don't 100% agree. I mean, there's people on board who suggesting 6%, or the other people who said they told us 3 to 4, you know, so there's gonna be one of these 9
No,
people.
I just feel like that once the board gets this done, they have to, their task was defending it.
Yes.
And I hope it will be loud and clear.
Especially because the 3 to 4% guidance, same thing happened last year, as you pointed out. There wasn't any rationale for why we want your budget to be 3 to 4% over. If finance were to say, we need it to hit 4% because we have these added costs in park and rec, or flooding on salt box, or whatever, like, if they just offered any inkling of why, it would be much easier for everyone to understand why maybe we need to take a second look at this and be more willing to make cuts. But the fact that they just say, well, it's 3 to 4%, like, take it or leave it, is not acceptable in my mind.
Well,
Yeah, I think that they've got another set mark, which is how much they want to raise taxes.
Yes.
And there, you know, that there's a ceiling that they feel they can't go beyond.
Where do they get that information?
Exactly.
They don't say any of that, that's the problem.
Other than nobody likes high taxes. So what is the reason why?
No,
I
I'm
agree
saying
with
I
that.
think they have, I'm
Yeah,
not
I agree
giving,
with you, yeah.
Well, I do think that they presented the state of town,
Yeah.
their logic. You know, we can disagree with it, but we know why it is, right? I mean,
What is their
our
logic?
our investment income has gone down. Our debt went from 60 million or 80 million a couple of years ago to 260 pro forma for whatever we're doing with for the HHR, right? So we have more debt, interest rates went up. So, you know, even 4% increase in budgets because of these costs is really means 6% increase in taxes, right? Board of Finance said, listen, 6%, do you personally want to pay more than 6%? Maybe 7 is fine. Is 9 fine? I don't know, you know, I mean, at some point, right, we voted these people in.
Sometimes you have to. We all know that.
So they
What
tried
did
to
you say,
explain it,
Janet?
they disagree with it.
Nobody wants to pay more.
right.
Yeah.
Of course not. I
It's
think
just very hard to reconcile that we have to do this now 2 years in a row, and we have this looming great island, and we're pouring money into the consulting to widen the road and fortify the seawall and make it to where you can go and do anything other than just walk around. And it's obviously, even though they're not saying it, that is costing money that could be used for this sort of thing.
Yes.
That's-
People were in that meeting, you know, some people voted for it, some people against it, right?
No word.
You know.
We're paying for the choices we've made.
That's right.
And the board, that's part of what the Board of Finance is saying. We've made these choices. Now granted, they were a huge part of those choices, but these are the choices. The truth is, the RTM voted, unfortunately, very strongly, oh, I say unfortunately, strongly in favor of Great Island.
87 versus 13, yeah.
I was one of the 13.
I was good.
But, that's a huge choice we made.
Yep.
And now it's coming back to bite us, as many of us knew it would.
Yeah.
Our job is to defend our budget and not be sympathetic to all the other budgets.
That has been spent, the 11 million has not been spent. That seems like a bigger target.
The 11 million.
The
Yes.
11 million in excess tax.
No, but not only that, we have huge investments to make in Great Island.
Yeah.
One was the purchase, but that's just the
Oh,
beginning. And the other stuff was very quiet,
Right.
not discussed openly,
Right.
how much it would cost us in the future.
Right.
So,
The truth is that people, and somebody said it, and I have the same sentiment, is that people don't move here because of the island, right? And as you corrected me properly last week, a couple of weeks ago, is that even though 60% of people in this town do not have kids in their school system, they very much care about their house values and their town. And so it's, yeah, it was a judgment, and, now we have to live with it. And the problem, not the problem, but as Dr. McKenna said, at the beginning of January 28th meeting is, next year is 5% again. You're up to 5% again.
Yeah.
So unless, we can always cut that one person in security, one this thing, and, chip around, but you have to look at the bigger things, which is special education, curriculum. I don't see many other, right?
How about the cost of parking at the high school? That's just such an easy one, and once again, why isn't that explained?
They raised it last year,
they
right?
did raise it.
But I don't,
$20 more
but I
maybe.
still think, like, maybe we could,
What?
a couple more bucks on that one, I don't know.
Everybody's willing to
Yeah,
pay
what is
that
it?
one.
I don't know.
We
I
got
don't
it, that
know.
we don't like higher taxes.
Is it
I'm
really
still
that
in
much
favor.
money?
I'm still in favor of naming rights on the stadium. I think that'd be a
Right,
great
right.
one.
Absolutely.
They're finally doing
Plenty of
advertising, right?
championships won on
Yeah,
that
they
field. I think it would work out
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, they were talking
And
about
you
it.
have a number of fields, you don't just have
Yeah, that's
football,
right.
you have
Sure do.
softball, lacrosse, all the things that we're all
The
good
whole
at,
campus.
that's like 7 different things to name.
It's true.
One of the things you touched on, Janet and Peter, is that the house, what we have, what I feel, is that people come into the Board of Ed and they say they moved here because of the education system. That has a large effect on other people who don't have children in the schools, because we know that, as they say, the school system is a very valuable thing in this town. And I know a lot of my friends have moved away. They want to be with their kids or their grandchildren, and they're in Maine, and they're in California, and they're in Ohio. And their houses were sold to people who came to Darien for the school system. So I think that
And
a
they
lot of us.
tripled the cost of the house that they bought.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Exclude that.
I think for a lot of us, the fact that Darien is sought after for its schools has had an excellent reflection on my house costs, you know.
Yeah.
And if you look at, what are the investments you make over your lifetime, how did you do with this stock? How did you do with this, and how did you do with your house? Because I know ours has had a significant, now, of course, we had to raise it after we flooded, but
I do have to say that, I'm all about efficiency, and I'm always, I was suggesting, department subcommittee of efficiency a couple of years back, because I thought there was more to do, and I think Mr. Simi has really focused on it in the finance subcommittee. But when I see Mrs. Blakely, who stands out there and says, I've been here 27 years since the first time speaking, that worries me, right?
Yeah.
And she said one thing that worries me more. She's like, we're not in crisis, right?
Yeah.
There's no
We're what?
employment. We are not in crisis
Exactly.
as town, right? Or as
Yeah.
people, right? There's no
Yeah.
depression,
No.
there's no war,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
full employment, New York is humming. And we're struggling here to keep
To
our
just
teachers.
maintain.
Exactly.
That didn't
Yeah.
strike me because
Yeah.
everyone feels like they're in crisis as you're watching the contentious.
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, if this is where things are going well,
Exactly.
Yeah.
and this is how the reaction is, I'm thinking, being new to this, so I'm just looking at it for the first time, I was like,
Mhm.
holy moly, this is not good, and what is it, and then kind of what you were talking about, like, you need to, I feel like you need to, what you said, defensible, and you need to look at the whole system and what's going to happen. I mean, Sarah, a parent brought this up a couple of times, trying to say, well, tell us what it's gonna look like in,
1 year,
2
3
years,
years,
3 years.
5, yeah.
Because she's trying to my sense is that she's trying to get, if you take away these things, where are we going to be? What are you gonna do to us? And I think that's kind of what I felt like it was missing, like you're kind of sitting, turning over every stone, and it's like it's the forest through the trees, and I just felt like there wasn't this holistic approach to what you want the school to look like. And then when you keep the budget, when it doesn't get passed, and then you're spending more time, then you're taking away from the time that you want to think about what you want your curriculum to look like, what you want the schools to look like, what you want you want, again, I'm giving the umbrella signal here, that you want to look at everything overall, and that seemed to really be lacking in all of this, because there was too much finger pointing and and too much just looking at taking 1,000 here and 2,000 there, and they're like, wait, what are we doing? I mean,
As you said, trying to back into a number.
Yeah.
This is we're talking about this like these are costs, but these are really investments, and we can draw hard
Yeah.
lines
Very
to the
good.
investments from a storytelling
Yes.
standpoint, that these investment in education, and if you don't have children, it's an investment in your property values, and you can draw a straight line from what we're putting into education to what the property value is.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. And we talk about the fact that there's a huge part, probably more than half of the people in this town that don't have children in the school system. Some of those are because they haven't had children yet. And the rest of them are people like me who stays here and wants to stay here and value. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if I didn't value what the town means in terms of its education system and what it means for me. That's a very selfish way to look
It's
at
a
it.
good investment for everyone.
Yeah.
It's an investment for everyone, So, I get worried when people segregate the education budget from the whole overview of what the town is.
Agreed.
And I
Agreed.
think that what I'm saying is, let's not do that. Let's understand that education is more than just educating our children in this town. In any town, it's more than just educating the children. And I just hope that we as a community keep that kind of thing in mind, because the segregating, well, I don't have children, so I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Somebody else paid for my kids to go through. Somebody else's taxes paid for my kids to go through.
Along with your own.
What?
Yeah.
Along with
your
my
own,
own.
yes.
Right.
Also, so many graduates, people who grew up here, tend to boomerang back and come back and raise their kids because it's a great place to live and it's a good town, and that just helps everyone. They come with good jobs, they're smart, like everybody wins when we keep this good.
I'm one of those people that bounce back.
Yeah, but doesn't that strengthen the argument of investment versus budget cuts, right? To your
Yes.
point, it's like, we're not in crisis, so it's like, how do we change that language? Is it through what we say individually, as a committee? I just, it's almost like, not critically, but it's like forest of the trees, right? That's what you're saying, something is lost, and so is there anything that we can do to, because again, yes or no are our options, correct?
Yeah.
And so in that, what else, what is the most
Well, that gets
effective
us
way?
back to Peter's
I like
suggestion.
Peter's idea of changing the bylaws, because
Yes.
this is a lot of work and a lot of meeting
Sponsored by
time
Peter.
and a
It
lot
is.
of emails
It
and a
is.
lot of nothing for
Yes.
nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and
That's-
I guess
that's
it's
true.
taking the
That's
decision
true.
making
Yeah.
from
That's
small
depressing.
groups to the
Yeah.
largest.
Yeah.
And I will say that's not
To your
unique to
side.
this committee. Like the
No,
other
that's
committees
the
I have
whole
worked on,
RTM,
there
but like
is
it doesn't
a,
have to be that
yeah.
way. It shouldn't just be if we disagree with what finance has said and we don't want the Board of Ed, we don't want to approve their cut budget, like that should matter. You had to run for office to get even on this committee, like why doesn't it make a difference how we feel
It's
after
it's-
doing all the work?
If I can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Two things, that's a big change, and it needs to be thought through. I'm all for studying it with somebody who does that. We have a committee, right, which is called TSAG.
TGS,
GSA, right? But this is a big change. I watched a couple of couple of meetings at RTM where we were not able to agree on a simple thing, 2-hour discussion about Pledge of Allegiance, flags. Having 100 people decide something could be very unwieldy, but I feel that's, it's tricky, right? We spend time trying to understand it, and then we have to say approved, because it's either 0, because if we say no, it goes back to 0. Or, or we approve, right? So it's sort of like people are like, yes, of course you will approve, right? So I don't like it. But one thing, an argument that was made about, 3 to 4% versus where we are now, we're between 4.5 and 5, or Board of Education is. New Canaan 4.6 and Westport 4.7 has been approved, right? So I always don't want to look at them all the time, because I hope we do things better than these 2 towns, but they are very comparable towns, and they didn't get any. This is where they are, and they have similar issues as we are, right? So us at 4.5 to 5 is not outrageous.
They get 27,000 for winning the Turkey Bowl, for hosting the Turkey Bowl. And
That's right.
I'm not sure that that's in our budget, or when you're hearing anything about it.
Yeah, Turkey Bowl,
That
let's
was in the
raise
paper
the
about
ticket
the candy.
There was an interesting, and this is just on the side, but people are really turning around every stone, right? What surprised me is, for these public games, hockey games or football games, we ask police department, which we pay as well, right, to support us, and they don't tell us how many.
That's
how
right,
many
they won't
police-
tell us,
Yeah,
yeah.
I-
2 to
yeah.
4,
Do we
right?
have-
Yeah,
We
I thought
cannot
that
tell,
was,
well,
yeah.
Yeah.
If you request the
Yes.
officers, that you can't request how many.
No, they
tell
tell,
you.
they tell you
Yeah.
how many.
So
Yeah.
I was,
Well, I guess they're the experts, right?
Yeah.
That's
They
But
are.
that's not right.
They have a budget though.
Well, it's hard to budget for.
The police department has a budget, and you can watch that on TV.
But
Yeah.
I presume the school would be paying for the security. If they're asking for security on an event, wouldn't the school cover the cost of that officer's time?
correct,
They
that
are,
would
they
should
are.
mean that we
Doesn't
cannot
impact
tell
the
them,
police's
have 2
budget.
people only, not 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I understand there may be some security and unknown, and it could be other things, but I was surprised that it's
Me
sort of
too.
open-minded, especially because it's our people,
Mhm.
right? It's the same town,
Do
same
they-
budget.
Do they charge when you go to away games in other high schools? Ridgefield
Charge-
did it when my kids were in school, that was
Charge what? Charge for
a
the,
fee to go in to watch the game.
if it's
Yeah.
FCAC, I think, right?
No, well, girls
I think you have
basketball,
to buy
I
tickets
just,
for
I
some
just paid for a
FCA
ticket
events,
for girls
right?
basketball at Stanford High School.
In
Yeah.
football, you have
So
to
yes.
pay.
Yeah.
we don't charge
Yeah.
them, right?
Why would you get to go for free? Yeah.
No, you have to pay,
We don't
well, you have to pay for the
Nothing's
football
free.
games.
Yeah,
And I think I even paid to go into track meets.
yeah, probably,
But
yeah.
do we charge?
No, I don't think, no, they're saying no.
We charge
It
for
depends
games.
on the, it depends on the event,
But
like,
for-
if, like,
for-
like, I just
I
went
think
to
that's
a girls'
okay.
basketball game,
Yeah.
and there was no
Yeah.
fee. Like, I mean, I think it depends on the sport, it depends on if it's in the FCAC, I think it depends on a few things.
Yeah, like I've
So-
gone to basketball games, they don't
Yeah.
get paid.
Yeah.
But
Football,
we
they
should
charge
know
for
that.
FCAC
I mean,
games.
it's a source of
Yeah.
revenue,
Mine
obviously.
Yeah.
charge.
I've always thought we were just so polite and gracious that we invited everybody.
Well, I will say, guys, it's 8:30. I don't know if we want, I'm not saying we have to stop discussing the budget, we can certainly continue, but, I just wanna point out that public hearing is tomorrow at 7 PM. That's the Board of Education building. You can Zoom, you can,
Can't
watch
go in
on
person.
YouTube, you can go in person.
You can?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can, go- you
At the
can,
BOE meeting, at the BOE?
Public-
Oh, yeah?
yes,
Public
Yeah.
hearing
Big room
tomorrow,
like that?
so
Yeah,
public
you can-
comment.
absolutely go
Well, I
in
wasn't
person.
sure if public comment meant by Zoom or something.
Oh, no.
You can-
No.
it means
Much
that-
more effective in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. I
You
think-
get 3, wait,
yeah.
you're on the clock though.
You get 3
Right,
minutes.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
has 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It starts with public comment.
But
Yeah.
can we,
But I don't think
Is it
it's
standing
something
room
there
only
or
or
not.
Pretty much.
Yes, we can, if we wanna
On
do
the
that, yes, we
education
can.
budget.
I'm not sure this one
I
starts with,
wouldn't wanna get up there and speak, but like, I don't think it's a
It has
bad
the agenda.
idea.
I
Oh,
agree.
so they have their
All
meeting
sorts of
first,
things
and then they
the
open
same
it
way.
up.
I think it would have to be
It did say
succinct
public
and,
comment.
Yes,
Yes.
like one person on behalf of us.
And then like,
how many couple of us
Having
stand
like
up
a
there?
little meeting.
and then
So-
just kind of like
Yeah.
the biggest issues, or perhaps
Yes.
it's this larger thing. I
It's a
really think
special
the
meeting.
investment thing was really wise. These are not costs, these are investment. Let's get back to looking at this
Public
whole
hearing.
as an investment, and we've drifted from that. And then that could cover a whole barrage of things, because I think in 2 minutes, there's no way we're gonna cover.
Yeah.
And
But
I think
I guess-
Paul Blakely's point is good too, which,
It says,
you know, that we're
members
not
of
like
the
in a
community wishing
crisis
to
right now,
participate in
like,
public
yeah.
comment should
I
join
think
the
those
meeting.
two
But
are.
I-
Yeah, but
Yeah.
public
No, but I
comment
think,
used to be at the beginning
because
of this
And now
time.
this
Board of
just says
Finance and
call
Board of
to
Ed
order
are
and
coming
then
to
chairperson's remarks.
some sort of middle ground number. And
This was
as the
what she
committee that
said.
is charged with knowing a little bit more about the budget than the rest of the RTM, are there specific issues in the budget that this committee wants
Fair
at least
point.
addressed?
Mhm.
To
Yeah.
say, you guys are planning to cut this, we as a committee think that's a mistake, or defending something.
Yeah.
That was what your first letter did, right? Like,
Yeah, and that's the
and
thing.
then that went back in.
Everyone saw our comments. I mean, I can always kind of reiterate, you know, in writing what our original comments were and just, you know, make those suggestions. We can also agree that people want to give their own public comment. I don't know, I feel like I love the idea of our committee giving a comment on behalf of the
I do
committee.
too.
I feel like we're a little pressed on time. I mean, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest,
Yeah.
because it is tomorrow. And so I think that it's a good idea, but I'm not gonna sit here and drive. I think we can also accomplish it by sending them a note and not having it, you know, in person.
The main reason for doing it in person, in my experience, is that everyone gets to hear it, and they
Yes.
can't
Yeah.
pretend it didn't happen.
And
Yeah,
that's
'cause
what
I
I
don't
think
like
if
that
we
your
send them
email's
all.
been
So are you-
ignored.
are
I
you
think that's
volunteering
so
to do
I
it?
always do.
Okay, so I'll say it
If
on
I'm
here. I
there,
think
I
it's
But
so
I think
rude.
if we send them a
There's been
letter, they're
unknown.
just
I'll
gonna
tell
bury
them.
it.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
they're not
Just like
right.
there's one coming up
Year or
Yeah.
whatever, you know.
Because someone
I've done it
January
before.
and we have our budget.
No, okay, I'm happy to go. I just also didn't wanna be like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of us in this room and I don't wanna be the person that's always saying, I'll go do that, or I'll, you know, so if anyone has a strong desire to speak tomorrow, please tell me. If anyone does not want to but thinks we should,
Yeah.
please tell me. I mean, I do like the idea of the committee
I agree.
collectively giving a comment, a short and sweet comment. I think it would be effective.
We've talked about so much, maybe we should talk about what we think was the most important.
Well, do you wanna go back to your statement?
It's a hard job to.
Because I think Liza's statement was a nice distillation of at least where we started, and then that could at least, I know Liza's like, it's 8:30, I'm like, let's get out the statement.
No, but I agree, because that is something I
like,
do feel
yeah,
like we tried,
yeah.
I do feel like we tried
That was
in
a-
our written comment to point out the things, and I think.
And you can open by saying you haven't gotten a response. That's why I said I would talk.
can open
Ah,
by saying she
yeah.
hasn't gotten a response yet, no.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll do that one. if
Is
that's
that
what-
true?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, it's true.
I know.
I got the cookie cutter response.
Well, yeah, I got the response that they received the response.
Oh,
Well,
maybe it was too substantive.
I
okay,
think
that's
it was-
better,
yeah.
that's better than nothing, I thought, yeah.
But,
Really fine.
so, okay, if everyone would like that, what I can do is, write up a blurb and I can send it out, and if anyone feels like that does not reflect your views, I will change it, because I do not want to say anything that is on behalf of all of us that's not reflective of all of us.
Just don't reply all, right?
Yeah, yes, reply just to
Don't
me,
make it a
because,
committee.
yeah, because we don't wanna host an
Yeah.
unwarned meeting, so yeah, that's the only thing. Does that,
We said so many things.
I
It's
know.
Should we just
hard
bullet,
to
should we bullet
summarize
Yeah.
exactly.
now, so you don't have to do so much work?
Yeah.
well, I feel like
Here.
we've kind of reinforced
I know, I
what
should.
tonight, what we sent them already originally, so I feel like I will send out something.
So now you can, like you said, you can say it out loud now, it'll be certain, it won't be
Yeah.
email, like.
Yeah.
But what I heard tonight was that some of the biggest issues, the biggest budget items in the education budget are still misunderstood.
Yeah,
And if we don't understand them, you can guarantee the public doesn't understand them, and they make up their own answers.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
not what we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
This has happened
that's
too
why I
many times.
raised the whole
right?
thing with the psychologists. I think people in the
Yeah.
town are not clear about what is the mental health thing, what are the psychologists. I understand, I think it's probably clearest at the elementary schools, because it's same at each elementary school, whereas the middle school and the high school it's a different thing. And it's a big line item. If it's, we've got to be clear about what is happening with special ed, with the psychologists and on a K-12 level. Because there's a lot of questions about the cost of special ed and the cost of the mental health parts of the school. And I think we need to understand that a little bit more, because I know the public doesn't understand it.
Well, I
And to
think
your
the
point
cost
about the
of
Board of
spe-
Education defending it,
Yeah,
right? If you guys have determined that this is what we need, just tell us.
Mhm.
Right?
You
yeah.
don't necessarily
Same
have
with
to have a
private
psychologist for special ed.
Well, but we don't know what they're,
I got it.
no, they don't have to have it, but I don't know how the psychologists fit in and whether.
I know, I got it, but I just wanted to clarify, it's not assumed that if you're in special ed, you're
No,
gonna see a
exactly.
Well,
psychologist.
and also, isn't our main question about special ed not kids receiving services in district, but more the outplacement, the $8 million that leaves because we can't service those kids in district? And that problem will never be solved if we're always trying to back into a number and they don't have time to figure out how to bring those kids back. And also why it costs so much. Like, how do they determine who gets to go to a private out-of-district program and who goes to a public state-run program? Like, how are those kids differentiated in their needs? Why is it $8 million? We
Yeah.
won't get that answer if
There-
we're always trying to do
Right.
this.
I mean, that, there is detail on that, in that a lot of that is private settlements with families. And a lot of it, again, as a family that's gone through those investigations, it's what's the most appropriate setting? Who can offer the right services for a particular child? But it is, as you said, with that kind of outplacement, some of them are absolutely more than appropriate, some of them we can't be sure, right? But there's a lot of legal fees in there too. A lot of it is settlement with families.
I'm a special ed parent as well. My kid is in district, gets PT, OT, speech, all of it. We went through ELP, like that could be me at some point, but we still need to understand, like,
Could we do better?
can we be better about this? Could I keep Ben in Darien if I needed to instead of having to ship him off?
And to be honest, that only serves as a special education parent myself. To me, more clarity on that as a parent would help me.
Yeah.
Not in terms of like, oh, because it's very binary at this point, and understandably, it's a very individualized process, right? You can't just set a standard, and because so much of what children need is particular to that child, and that frustratingly is never linear, or stays the
Yeah,
same.
right.
So there's that, but even say, like, that would be helpful. It wouldn't be without value to the parent as well. Not to
Like,
pick it
is
apart
it-
and be like, this neighbor got this, but
Is
yeah,
it
it's a good
because
point.
we haven't figured out how to service dyslexia? Like, what is at the core that we could possibly try to bring in-house and lower the cost of sending the kids out of
Yeah.
the district? Because $8 million is a lot. And I know as a special ed parent myself, like, I know those parents made the choice that they made because that was the best for their kids.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate that they had to do that and that they live in this town and they couldn't stay
wasn't their
in the
preference.
district.
It wasn't the preference of people I know.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true.
like that's a
But
And I
shame.
mean, that's subjective, but
It's
it
a
is, yeah.
big topic, it's a
Yeah.
big subject,
Yeah.
which is probably why it's still challenging to find a
Other
solution.
kids,
Yeah.
right?
But
Yeah.
you've still got the
Parents should
general
have it.
education that's being squeezed, actually, too.
Yeah.
It is, I mean,
My question is even
Agreed.
wider,
Right.
right? It's
Yeah.
8 million out of 30, and 21% kids versus 15 in other districts.
Right, that's
So,
my question
Yeah.
too,
You know,
yes, it's a
But yes,
big
this is a big
percentage.
portion of it. Special ed is one part,
Yeah.
right?
And again-
Curriculum, I'm always focused, same conversation about curriculum, is something I don't understand,
Yeah.
because,
And I think, again, curiosity. We're not here to accuse, we're not here to
Yeah.
be contentious.
We just
This
wanna-
helps inform us because we all value this. I think that's the
Yeah,
most important thing
exactly.
to keep.
And I think that's the most important message that I'm hearing from this committee, which
Yeah.
is you would do yourselves a great service if you would maybe make more effort to explain to the general public,
Please.
rather than you have to show up at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever it is, what's behind these, I would say, more controversial or very large and growing line items.
And you're right, and in the void comes the least generous interpretation, right? I'll speak
Oh
for
my
me. I'm
gosh.
sure we have all heard, well, because they met the island, blah, blah, blah. They must be tired of hearing that too. Like, can we do better? Can we do
yeah,
more?
they could just
You know?
offer an explanation for setting a target. Like, it's not
Yeah.
easy. It's always better to over communicate rather than doing what we're doing and just having to meet some
And,
random
same-
number.
The same goes for the later school start, right? That would cost us, someone said $1 million, and we just can't afford to even think about it.
Yeah,
this
that
year.
was
That's
over.
never
Where?
gonna
It was just
happen.
done.
Yeah, right, yeah,
Okay,
There's a groundswell of support for that.
yeah,
I know.
and a lot of people would argue that should be a really high priority.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah,
And my biggest takeaway today is that, I always was like, and I like a lot of those folks on the Board of Education who are saying, we give them 3 to 4%, we should deliver 3 to 4%, but I personally, after learning more last 2 weeks and listening to the board meetings, 4.5% works for me. So I will raise my hand. I mean, in reality, I will raise my hand for less too, because alternative is 0, but I don't think Board of Education needs to be, ashamed of suggesting to Board of Finance 4.5%.
Yeah.
Peter, could you repeat that?
I said 4.5%, I think it's a reasonable number that I think I would vote for, and I think Board of Education can defend it, and I suggested a couple of things, how to defend it, because a lot of these things were unknown and uncontrollable.
Mhm.
They're clearly crowding out the general, school
Right.
education. That's my biggest takeaway today, and maybe that's something we can mention, we would support it as it stands. Now,
And
we have not gotten into those details, because 4.5% includes the paraprofessionals being taken out, right?
I know,
So-
but does it, does that include it if they add, fee scenario?
fees.
Yeah.
So I don't even know exactly how it's gonna
Yeah.
shake out, but.
Yeah.
We
Right.
haven't even talked about the
So
cameras.
they
Because it's so
They-
lateral.
I have to
They
say
do got
that,
about $500,000, right?
Yeah.
Through fees, through increasing the class, a couple elementary school classrooms to 24, which is the limit. That's about 600,000, 550, and I know the paraprofessionals was $1 million,
yeah,
right? So that's 500,000 more, which takes us close to 5 again. Now,
Yeah.
I remember in the last letter, we said that we are sort of supporting to keeping them in. I heard a presentation on the 28th by Dr. Adley and it was Mrs. Sion, I think, who was defending that, she was defending that it's doable without it.
Marge,
Marge,
yeah, or,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
One thing that whole conversation strikes me, and I feel like, I don't know, maybe I feel more strongly about this in the group, so we should clarify this. I struggle with this decision about the paraprofessionals a lot because Ms. Sion said that we don't have enough bodies in the building. That was her
Yep.
quote.
Yep.
And I do not understand why we are going, because
They're gonna
the
be gone.
constant complaint
Yeah.
is that they don't have enough subs. They said there's the rate of
Yeah.
absence for teachers requires, they don't have enough building subs, they don't have enough, and I quote, bodies in the building. And so then when the suggestion is to go from, 3 paras to 2 student interns, so we're basically down a whole person, not even commenting on expertise, but then those 2 student interns are gonna be 10 weeks of their stint totally unavailable to sub, which evidently this is why we're doing this, because they need people to sub. No one has complained about the performance of the paraprofessionals or the lack of need for paraprofessionals.
Yeah.
The only thing I have heard is they need more people to be subs in the building. So instead of saying we wanna add a sub, which again, I know they don't have the budget for it, but it feels like everything they've said, the answer to this, and again, not a solution because it's more money, is to add a building sub, not to take paraprofessionals out of the way. So I know that that's the most unpopular opinion, but what they're saying they wanna do solves none of their problems, and I'm
Exactly.
struggling.
So how
Yeah.
will they solve it? And
So,
that,
yeah.
and an explanation for that is important.
Why hasn't the sub criteria changed
None of
where
their
I'm
explanations
at
have
home,
been.
I'm not working, I'm available to sub, but I need to sub at my children's school so that I'm available before they go to school and when they get out. And the fact that I can't because they would also happen to be in the building is
Is it a rule?
discouraging.
Is it-
Is that true?
Is that
You
a
can't
rule?
sub at your own kid's school.
Oh.
Yeah,
But there's
Wow.
staff members with children in school.
Yeah, we have this,
Like, for-
yeah.
So
Conflict of interest somehow?
Are we sure?
Is that just at the elementary level?
I
Oh my
believe,
goodness.
yeah, I think so.
That's
I
odd.
think-
I've had my
What's
kids
the
in
rationale?
class, but
Yeah,
I
I
was
think
teaching
middle
high
school-
school.
It's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I didn't know that was a
I've had my
rule.
own kids
Yeah, I
in
didn't know that
class.
was a rule either.
I didn't know that.
Especially,
Especially,
and my neighbor subs at the high school, and her son goes to high
Maybe
school.
it's for little
Okay.
kids,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I didn't know that.
yeah.
I know that's the problem though, not to, that is what I keep hearing in the meeting, so I know that I know that the goal is to save money, but they are not problem solving by the suggestion, is every single conversation, start to finish, that I heard.
Yes.
So please correct me if I'm wrong,
No.
but I definitely listened carefully, and that is what I heard.
That's a good point.
Look, they are saving money,
It is a
right?
very
But
good
they are,
point.
you're saying that the student-facing time with with the paraprofessional is, or with the second teacher, or it's not a teacher, but second person in the classroom is diminished, you're saying, right?
I'm saying what they need is another sub,
Yeah.
or another student intern, that's
Coverage,
fine.
yeah.
But you're taking 3 full-time paras,
Going
and you're gonna get rid of them, you're gonna add, so now you're,
So 2 to 3.
so,
basically, you're
yeah,
saying,
2 to 3. But these two not only have no experience, but they have to do 10 weeks each
Of
of
student
student teaching
teaching.
in one classroom and cannot substitute throughout the building. So it's like it's less than 2. Even though it's 2, it's not really, because they can't help, and they keep saying that they're trying to problem solve for not having
1.5.
subs.
Yeah,
Yeah, so 1.5.
there you go.
So again, I know that our problem is dollars, and I know that we're chipping away to get down to the right number, but I don't think that we're chipping at the right spots. Stop cutting teachers, stop cutting paras, stop making little 6
Yeah.
and 7-year-olds have class with now 24
24
other
people.
kids and no paraprofessional
I know.
to ease the burden. I think even the conversation around
Yeah.
the teachers and the paraeducators is hurting, as you say, our home values, the investments in our homes, because now I think when you're in the city, you're looking, I'm gonna move out, I've got kids, am I gonna move to Westport, am I gonna move to New Canaan, am I
Exactly.
gonna move to Darien? Well, Darien, they talked about getting rid of IDEA. Did you hear that? They talked about it. I feel like all these conversations are really detrimental, whether they happen or not. And I know that we can't just spend. I know we have to find efficiencies, I understand that, but I don't think it's with paraeducators, I don't think it's with 7-year-old classrooms, and I certainly not with the explanation they've given us so far.
There you go.
Right, so I think this is a public budgets are different than private budgets,
Yeah.
right? Private company budgets, and there were some people at the Board of Education saying, how come this drags? And I think that's the nature of the beast. It's unfortunate, right? But I think people are grown-ups, right? They get it. I think the people get it, even though it's hard to listen to some of these, the way they talk about these FTEs, right? It's difficult. But my view is, if the superintendent tells me it works, if the human resources person tells me it works, I agree with you, I don't like the 3 to 2, but maybe you keep 1 para and you put 2, student teachers, whatever it is, right? Dr. Ellis said, listen, these people have the pedagogy, or they have better educators. Listen, I don't have kids in that grade, so I don't know how much it really changes their behavior, but.
I think when you have the paraprofessionals speaking
That's right.
themselves,
Oh, it was,
there was, as far as I could see, there was no argument, I mean,
Yeah.
Well, that's
I
what they're
agree.
the
That's
busiest
true.
people in the building.
Of course they are,
Yes.
yeah.
And
That's true.
even if we took your idea and we left 1 paraprofessional and 2 interns, those 2 interns are still out of pocket for 10 weeks, and so now you have 1 person doing all those jobs. Like they open the doors in the morning and make sure the kids are safe going into the building. They do the lunch, they help with reading and math. They're
They do
busy.
OT breaks,
They
they
do
do. Oh, no, they do.
everything. They'll
Yeah.
take your kid out and help them calm down and have a busy break. They'll do
and it's
anything.
continuation
needed.
from what
An
you
intern
Plus,
could not do
you're
my son's
starting
OT
from
breaks.
scratch every year with them,
Yeah.
I mean.
But that gets us back to your
And who's managing? the
question
interns?
before.
That's what-
Wouldn't the
who's gonna
easiest
screen them and
solution
hire
be
them, and that's
to
a whole
let
process
managing
itself.
them is a
parents
full-time job.
go into the school where their kid happens to be? Because they have an incentive to do so, they're affiliated with that school. That's a
I
great
wonder if it's
workforce.
just the younger ages because it's distracting or something. I mean,
I mean,
if you were
I
walking
could
in
be
the middle school and your
mistaken,
kid was
but I've
walking towards you, they'd probably go
heard
the
it
other
being-
way.
Okay, but higher good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the benefits vastly outweigh any kind of concerns they might have, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the other thing that I've been thinking
Doesn't
about the
pay very well.
interns is that when we hire someone that's
20
gonna
bucks or
work in
something,
the
yeah.
system, we interview them, we look at their past record, we know what they can do, we're hiring them. With an intern, I've
Yeah.
never heard anything about the fact that we're gonna be interviewing them and picking
Well, that's
them
what I
out.
just
Yeah,
based
we were
on-
just saying, we
We're
don't know
just
who's
saying that,
managing
like,
them.
who's
Yeah.
responsible
Where
for
are they
them, like,
teaching
what's
them?
the
Also, it's
liability factor?
unlikely that we'll be able to hire them when their term is over. So we're gonna train them and they'll leave and go elsewhere.
Can I ask one more question, different topic? This, the teacher professional development, I love the idea. The pushback is, which is a fair pushback, is that it takes off, it happens instead of the teacher, instead of teaching.
Yeah,
Yes.
And
yeah.
I didn't know that, I thought we have a
Yeah.
state mandated 180 days where the kids need to be in classroom, so how can it take out of student, we now have 178 days?
You can do half, I think if it's half, it still counts as a day or
It
something.
does,
Mhm.
yeah.
It does.
So that's how they would solve it.
Yeah.
They
2 hour-
basically would
Uh-huh.
start
2 hour
later,
delays.
2 hour delay, a couple of these
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, I
Let's
feel
talk
bad, I
tomorrow.
know, I feel like
No.
I tried to, I feel like we went long, I'm sorry.
It's important.
No, we
It's
needed
important.
to cover the subject of the
Yeah,
paraprofessionals.
it's important.
Right, I know, it's, sorry that this has been so lengthy, but I do feel like it was an important.
Oh, I think we all made it lengthy.
Yeah, Liza, I don't know what you're saying, sorry. I'm like, we all talk.
I participated in making it lengthy.
All right.
So who's talking tomorrow?
All right, I mean, I'm happy to, I'm also happy to share the wealth, and there's gonna be other opportunities, I think we definitely should show up at the Board of Finance public hearing as well, if
I'll
that,
do
if the
that
group, if the group agrees, but I can kickstart.
And that's on the
efforts
11th,
tomorrow.
you said, right?
That
About
is
13th?
on, hold on, sorry.
The public hearing is on the
13th.
11th.
March?
March 11th, yeah, March 11th.
Which I believe you said.
Is that right, guys?
Tuesday.
That's what I have.
Tuesday.
Okay, I will send out a blurb tomorrow. Please tell me if you don't like it, because I do not want to speak on behalf, if it is not reflective of our collective opinions, that I feel strongly about that. But I think it's nice that we do this, because I don't think we've done it in the past, and I think it would be a good idea, so.
Yep, I agree.
And I'm planning to go,
Okay.
but if I usually end up standing up to say something because of something that was said before.
I love that you do that. I mean, that's awesome.
What did you say?
You're an excellent public speaker.
I don't know, but
He usually
sometimes,
stands up and talks.
as
He's
was,
responding to something
as
else.
was referenced earlier, this has become such an uncollaborative process
Yeah. Yeah.
that we just need reminders of how this is actually, to Peter's point, this really should work. It's not just a theory.
Yeah.
Right? We can't have somebody, if the number is 3 to 4% every year, that's arbitrary. That's not considering what's happening in the world or in the rest of the budget or our labor contract or anything. So we have, I think, an obligation to stand up and represent this town and say we
Yeah.
can do better than arbitrary.
Agreed.
If anyone wants to email me tomorrow or call me, please do so. Otherwise, like I said, I'll send out something.
I'm teaching all day, so you won't hear
Okay.
anything from me. I can't. I'm with kids all day.
I'm glad
I
someone's
understand.
teaching all.
I
understand.
I substitute. It's not fun, let me
That's
tell
great.
you.
Someone wants to
We
make
thank you.
a motion to adjourn. I would love
So
to.
moved.
Curtis and Peter. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.